Capricorn part 2, calcium phosphate. We're going to have another look at this salt. There's a lot of things I covered in the first part, and it's a massive one, this one, because obviously there's an abundance of calcium phosphate in our bodies, and it is the main mineral that is primarily consumed within our framework. And the sea goat, is an interesting image, and it is a massive one. In alchemical law, George W. Carey talks about the goat as the great work is commenced in the goat, so to speak, and finishes in the white stone, which is an interesting comment, because my motto is what he's talking about, because I always refer back to Taoism, or what we call ancient Chinese med, because when I'm writing my book on this, because I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine, I use both these kind of metaphors, and I personally think the white stone he's talking about is the marrow in the body, and I'll get into that a little bit, which is our kidney essence, which relates to our blueprint, our DNA, our curriculum we need to fulfill in this incarnation. And this is really the only thing that we take with us at that point of death. When the hun and the po separate, we take our jing with us, our essence. And this will determine whether we come back in this life or the next. There's so many ideas around this subject. It's fascinating, to do with reincarnation or not, whether people believe in it or not. But there are a lot of biblical references to this that were taken out of the Bible, obviously. And probably for a very good reason as well, because, you have more control and all those kind of things. But let's just talk about, in terms of the bones and the essence, because I think it was in his Perry they said there was a tribe in India that would consider that would claim that a complete history of the person's life would be from birth to death is recorded in the bones. And just what I just said about the kidney, jing, and the essence is the same thing the ancient Chinese were talking about. So the bones are secret archives, and they don't decay like the flesh, obviously, the flesh and the blood. So the bones are the last part of us that kind of remain here for a very, very long time. And they hold the records, of our history. And whether we fulfill our curriculum or not in life, because Jing in essence is referred to that. We have a certain curriculum to fulfill, and then if we don't fulfill it, we, so to speak, come back. And this is probably why things like astrology these ancient divination arts are extremely important, because they can give us keys to understanding what our destiny can be. So there's many things about this salt I want to talk about, in terms of particularly the concept of the desire to travel, because a really, really strong deficiency on this salt. People will always want to be on the move. And I recently had a lot of truckies in my clinic who have actually been Capricorn types, and they just they can never settle down. They always feel like they have to move. And they've all been Capricorn sun types. And in astrology, I think in George W. Carey's book, he talks a lot about the sun's burning through a lot of this salt, but there can be other indications for that as well, which I'm going to talk about in my book, in terms of sometimes South Node Capricorns can burn through it. And so there's a few different indications into this salt we can look at in terms of how you can burn through the mineral quickly. But one of the most primarily ones is the sun in Capricorn. And these types, yes, they're always on the move. They've got to feel like they've got that constant desire to travel. And another very, very important part of this salt, I think, is the digestive factor. I think it's one salt that's not really thought about so much in terms of digestion, but I guess when we look at it from a pediatric point of view and why calcium phosphate is so well indicated for children, on so many levels. Firstly, on the concentration level. Secondly, they're growing quickly. They're using a lot of, kidney essence and Jing, yet again, the Taoist correlation, to grow. They rely on that pre-heaven essence from our parents, which is congenital, a lot to do with the Jing, to use especially for the first 8 years of life, until they start relying more on the so-called earth element. And it's interesting how Capricorn is connected to the earth, because from a 5-element perspective, this is the stomach and spleen function, which is the primary digestive function in particularly from a Chinese medical point of view. But the fact that when we're really, really deficient in calcium phosphate, the blood is not able to, it's going to weaken the digestion, and the digestion's not going to be able to get it into the bloodstream, which can make the cells starve and cause anemia. So even if we're eating the foods that are so-called full of calcium, if there's not sufficient amount of calcium phosphate in the body, you're still not going to absorb it. And this is a really, I think Nis Perry in her book really highlighted this, and I've really seen this clinically with children who are very emaciated. And, they're doing all the nutritional stuff from that modern nutrition or some naturopaths have talked about, but I think they're missing the key point of one of the basic foundations for our bodies, because we have an abundance of this salt in our body, and it's primarily one of the most important ones to supplement and keep in check. Now, on that note, particularly because this salt rules the procreative function. So, and Nis Perry makes the point, and this is back in the day, I can't remember what year she wrote this book, but this salt is obviously required in far greater amounts than any other salt. So, and they did an analysis back then and found out there was more Calc Phos in our procreative fluids than in the blood itself. And she was stating that scientists back then didn't understand why. But so there is actually, and this ties back into why the ancient Taoists would be doing things like, in terms of men's health, semen retention, because there's a lot of calcium phosphate in semen. And so this is why this salt is considered one of the chief building materials for the body. And it was never meant to be thrown away sparingly. So you've got to throw it away sparingly, so to speak, in terms of not wasting your Jing. And this is probably one reason why the ancient Taoists were so hell-bent on conserving the Jing, because when you conserve Jing, you're conserving life. But it's not just about, it's more about holding on to that, because you're not going to lose blood, you're not going to lose essence, and that's going to brighten the mind, keep the mind razor sharp like a sword. Because if we've got enough Jing and essence, our memory's extremely good. We can concentrate better. And, all those exercise therapies like Tai Chi, Qi Gong, in conjunction, actually, if people are really, really deficient in this salt, they need to do that weight-bearing exercise and with it. And Tai Chi, Qi Gong is one of the best ones for it. 100%. And it's interesting to note from an astrological point of view, when Schussler, I think, and back in that time when they were coming up with these, George W. Carey, Neptune was actually in Virgo. And it's interesting because Neptune obviously really fine tunes everything, heightens our sensitivity, makes us very acutely aware of energetics that most people actually, if you don't have a strong Neptunian signature, in your chart, then you won't be able to perceive this kind of energy. But Neptune was in Virgo, and Virgo rules health, psychological hygiene, hygiene of the body. And I think it's interesting at that time when Neptune was in Virgo, it's like almost refinement of the medicine. How can we come up with a medicine that helps more with vibrational frequency as opposed to just dense stuff that just hammers the physical body. And so this salt is incredible, really, and it's one of the really most important ones, and very important for men's health, extremely important in terms of the prostate function, seminal retention, all these kind of things. And so if we look at it even on a more deeper level, we can get into the I've got it, if it's going to come up here. Yes, it's deeply connected to the Devil card, which most people kind of freak out when they see, but it's actually not a negative thing. I think it is ruled by the malefics, so to speak, in astrology, of the Saturn and Mars. It has a stronger Saturnian signature to it. And I think the Capricorn type can be really lusty, right? Really tied to the earth plane. Love the physical senses, so to speak. But on a positive note, this card actually rules tycoons, businessmen, master of the material plane, because we're here to master the planet Saturn. That's the real initiation. Once we master the physical, once we master the earth, because Capricorn's about discipline. Very, very strong Capricornian types are extremely disciplined, and they run their life very meticulously. They like structure, they like order. And this card's it's a fascinating one. I could rant on about it for ages. I'm no expert actually on the tarot, by the way, but I study it all the time. There's some great people already doing some, really good online videos stuff in terms of the cards. I tend to look at it more from an academic point of view. And it's interesting seeing I'm an Aussie that Australia is actually ruled by the Devil card as a country. So I was about to do an astrology chart on the chart of Australia. I haven't got onto it yet because I didn't kind of really want to go down the political road, but I was going to do something like this. But I find the interesting thing about this card, actually, one of the most interesting ones, is the chains around the two, male and female, down below, and they're quite loosely tied when they could easily be taken off. And I think that is reflective of really what that means is we can get really bogged down in the Saturnian realm. And we have that choice to make out that we can take them off if we want to, and be able to let go and reach the higher states of mind of consciousness, because the Devil card rules the boundary, and Saturn is about boundaries. Saturn rules Capricorn. And, one thing is to know our own boundaries, but it's also where, if we've done the good, honest, hard work, then we can actually move beyond the boundaries of the earth realm and develop into higher states of consciousness. And I think the calcium phosphate salt is indicated for that. When we have actually done the honest, hard work. And this is what I think the great work is commenced in the goat. I think what George W. Carey means is when we discipline and structure our lives to a point when we get a good grasp on our mastering our bodies, because that's the earth element, mastering the material realm, we can finish with the white stone. And really, what he means by that is we've cultivated our essence as best we can for moving on to our next state of life. And death is really just a birth into the afterlife. So that's it for Capricorn. And I will move on for part 2s to do, I think, Aquarius. We're going to get more into the second part of Natrium Myrrh. So thanks for listening, guys.